The year was 2013. Less than a year earlier, Disney had purchased Lucasfilm. Now, Hasbro had made the leap with Star Wars toys into the 1/12 scale, spurred on by a generation of now adult toy collectors who were not only motivated by haunting childhood memories of their 3 3/4-inch 5 POA Star Wars figures, constantly derided when compared to the more versatile G.I. Joes throughout the 1980s. But also deep-seated insecurities among many of these middle-aged men who had been told all of their lives that 6 inches was the bare minimum, and by God they were determined to finally get 6 inches from somewhere. At the time, they declared they wouldn't need vehicles or playsets. They just collected the characters. But that only lasted about 3 months, and soon they were demanding the development of massive vehicles for those characters they'd once claimed were enough for them. A decade later, as every modern collector wouldn't fucking shut up about 1/12 scale and every toy collecting livestream was the same parade of worship for 6 inches, Hasbro, very likely under pressure from Disney to do them a solid, released a range of Indiana Jones figures in this ubiquitous scale. I feel that Hasbro are doing these figures, both the 6-inch and the retro. I think they're doing them very much as an obligatory layup for Lucasfilm. It's obvious Hasbro is not about to put a lot of thought capital into Indiana Jones. They're gonna put these out there, they're gonna see what they do, they're gonna see how they do, and then they're gonna reassess. I think the Indiana Jones stuff that's been shown from Hasbro is a massive layup. I feel like the Indiana Jones stuff that we are going to get from Hasbro from what we're seeing now is not going to be satisfying. There's not going to be enough of it. It's going to end prematurely, and everyone's going to kind of be left holding a bag going, well, at least they tried, you know, like, which they're not really trying. And it happened pretty much just like that. The Hasbro Indiana Jones Adventure series packed it in almost as soon as it had arrived. A scattershot line of products that had no strategy, no thematic cohesion within assortments, and hardly a single complete experience within the entire range. Normally I'd start at the beginning, as this line commenced with Raiders of the Lost Ark characters and yet another idol grab Indiana Jones, as I predicted when the Adventure series was announced. However, this entire line exists because of the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So even though these figures were released toward the end of the run, I really think you need to see them first. The Dial of Destiny assortment consisted of 4 figures: Indiana Jones, Helena Shaw, Jurgen Voller, and Ronaldo. The first thing you'll notice is that all 4 of these characters are stand-around purchases. There is no action in any of these figures. Indiana Jones, in addition to being an old man, is encumbered with a backpack and has a permanently coiled whip that plugs into his waist and a lunchbox flashlight. He's also been given chocolate brown trousers, which is a really strange deco error. I guess this version of Indy doesn't want people to see him shit himself. I can't figure out why Hasbro didn't at least give this figure an uncoiled whip for some better display poses. Helena Shaw comes with the same combo, a backpack and a lunchbox flashlight. Both of them are modeled after their scenes in the Cave of Dionysius, and both come with pieces of the Temple of Doom build and artifact. You'll note that neither of these figures come with the Antikythera device from the film they represent.
What you got here is Pandora's box.
No, actually, it's my box.
Then we have Jurgen Voller. He appears to have been modeled after his scenes in the Hotel Atlantique, with his dark suit, hat, and briefcase. No other accessories, like his Walther PPK, are included. He comes with parts for the Last Crusade build and artifact. As much as I didn't like this movie, it's an absolute waste that Indiana Jones wasn't given one half of the Antikythera and Voller the other half, that could be combined when you had the two figures in hand. Lastly is Ronaldo, and as much as I love Antonio Banderas, his character in this film is hardly a priority for an action figure. Maybe if they'd made him in his diving suit or something, I could be sold. But as it is, he's bum-leg Popeye. Indy can pair with Helena or Ronaldo, since he never changes his clothes the entire film and probably reeks to everyone around him by the end of the movie.
What is that?
What happened in there?
I don't know.
There is stink in there. My God.
However, Indy doesn't pair with Voller since he doesn't have his necktie, nor can Voller pair with Helena or Ronaldo, nor does Helena pair with Ronaldo. And I must once again point out there are no action accessories here. No uncoiled whip or gun for Indiana Jones, no gun for Voller, no dynamite for Helena, and Ronaldo, well, he should have been replaced with another character entirely, like one of Voller's henchmen, preferably that big guy, Hauk, though I find it very interesting that neither Teddy nor Agent Mason were chosen for the 4th slot in this run. Had they modeled Voller after his appearance in the Cave of Dionysius, given him his Walther PPK, packed Indy with a Walther P38, given each of them half the Antikythera, and given us Teddy from that scene, then all 4 figures would have worked together as a worthwhile combo to collect. This is that scattershot approach I referred to earlier. Hasbro has become spastic with figure assortment choices in recent years, and this adventure series is them at their worst. No strategy or thought was applied to any of their selections. It's like their people either don't know, or don't care, or both. And what makes this doubly baffling is how Hasbro manages to create some of these necessary accessories and not apply them to figures that desperately need them, as we'll see later. The dial assortment is a dull thud of a range, and the rest of the adventure series doesn't fare much better.
This is not an adventure, Sala.
Let's take the initial Raiders of the Lost Ark assortment. As with their 2008 figure range, Hasbro replayed the same general tunes, kicking off the adventure series with an Idol Grab Indiana Jones, a Cairo Marion, a Tanis Dig Sala, and an Ark Ceremony Belloc. They also added in Tote, a character they'd previously withheld for their frustrating Comic-Con exclusive in the 3 3/4 inch range of figures. Each one of these figures comes with a piece of the Ark of the Covenant build and artifact, which is a nice piece all things considered. However, it's about to present a glaring missed opportunity, but more on that in a second. First, we have Indiana Jones, the same old Indiana Jones Hasbro always puts out, except this time 6 inches in scale instead of 3 3/4 inch. Even with the opportunity for added detail and new technology, the face sculpt is sorely lacking. Indy looks ill, and his articulation is barely able to achieve anything interesting. A crossover curse of the Star Wars Black Series figures having outdated joints that lack any ambition by their figure design team. He comes with a coiled whip that's extremely difficult to get snapped onto his belt, an unfurled whip for action poses, his revolver, a few pairs of hands, and that blasted idol that Hasbro can't seem to let go of. The coiled whip and the revolver are also way undersized. With the whip, this isn't as much of an issue, but the revolver ends up looking like a squirt gun rather than the big end-frame revolver he lugs around in the movie. Lastly, there's the idol, a little booger of gold plastic. It's whatever. Given they provided multiple pairs of hands, it would have been great to have gloved hands and a torch, so Indy could be used in a Well of Souls display. And before you guys go in on me with the Mezco Raiders Indy being superior, don't give me that crap, alright? I have the Mezco Indy, he's also an Idol Grab Indy, and they also missed the opportunity to pack him with gloved hands, and they really should have. Mezco and SH Figure Arts make the same mistakes that Hasbro makes in this area. None of them leveled up. I argue this Hasbro figure should never have come with the idol and been a gloved Well of Souls Indy from the start. Because almost immediately after releasing this figure, they released it again, now with the pedestal for the idol included. It was the same damn figure, except now with a pedestal.
Don't be fooled! She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid cheap hat!
But she's got a new hat.
Instead of using that deluxe release as the opportunity to give us something different, such as a Well of Souls Indy with a torch, gloved hands, and maybe the crate for the Ark and some snakes, nope, repack the figure they've already bought and add that pedestal. Hasbro sucks so hard at their own game. Their Marion Ravenwood was a misguided exercise in how to turn good intentions into a disaster. What should have been a character with soft goods trousers looks more like a backup dancer for MC Hammer with those massive hard plastic pantaloons. Her face sculpt is okay, but doesn't quite hit the mark for Karen Allen. She comes with the monkey and her frying pan, as you might expect. The monkey is a nice bit of detailed bonus with articulated limbs and can perch on her arm pretty easily. Marion, sadly, doesn't stay upright too well without a figure stand, and those legs make most poses look ridiculous. I hope at this point you're starting to see why I hadn't planned on buying any of these. I'm only doing this video because everyone wanted my thoughts on them and I found them on clearance at Hasbro Pulse, so I was able to get the entire range for a relative song. However, I'm more curious to find out what Analog Toys thought of these.
Well, I don't know. I only wanted one.
What? Actually, I can't blame you. I didn't want any of them myself. Which one did you get?
I opted to purchase Sala, and this version of the action figure has been designed with the costume that the character was wearing throughout the Tannis scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark. While his face sculpt is adequate, it's nothing to write home about, but it certainly does a better job of capturing the likeness of John Rhys Davies than Hasbro's weak attempt at sculpting Harrison Ford's face.
Sorry, Indy.
The action figure's articulation can be described as clunky at best, and it is far more reminiscent of Star Wars Black Series posability than the superior articulation of Marvel Legends. Yet what is most frustrating about Sala's posability is the fact that all of his lower leg articulation is massively hindered by his giant plastic skirt. While I have no problem with his PVC waistcoat, Hasbro really should have made the lower half of his robes out of fabric so that you can get the figure into more dynamic poses. The Adventure Series Sala comes packed in with the top and bottom builder pieces of the Ark of the Covenant artifact, a nicely detailed shovel, and a plastic rendering of a coil of rope, even though it's Indy that carries the rope to the map room in the film and not Sala. I'm unsure why Hasbro chose to provide a lump of plastic that looks like a rope instead of giving us a length of white string, as that would have been cheaper for them to produce and would have afforded collectors far more display options. Overall, this is a quite bland looking action figure, yet I picked up a couple of them for two reasons. Firstly, because I think John Rhys Davies is an absolute legend. And secondly, because they make for an excellent Al-Qaeda bomb-laying team.
Okay, so now we have an Indiana Jones from Peru, a Marion from Cairo, and a Sala from Tannis. Are we seeing the problem here? In a line of figures where you're not going to get vehicles and likely not many figures period, it should have been a priority to create figures that make nice display groups. Yet, as with Dial of Destiny, this set so far has no display cohesion. Indy doesn't go with this Marion, nor this Sala. Meanwhile, Sala and Marion also don't go together. If they'd done Indy and Marion as Well of Souls versions, we'd have a great trio here. Alas, Hasbro is dumb as a brick. So now we turn our attention to Belloc in his ceremonial robes. In most instances, a rather useless figure as I've stated in previous videos. However, Hasbro also has done up Tote, complete with his Walther P-38, his alternate hand with the Staff of Ra burned into his palm, and his melting face when he stares into the Ark of the Covenant. And with the ability to get a full arc, this is shaping up nicely. Now let's grab our Dietrich figure and... oh, right, yeah. Hasbro didn't provide any German military figures in this line, including primary characters like Dietrich. So what would have been a great grouping of Dietrich, Belloc, and Tote before the Ark is just left unfinished, and pointlessly so. I'm sure there was some weird mandate from Disney about not making figures in German uniforms, and this line is all the more pointless for the decision. A huge nothing burger that tastes like cardboard.
Now you're getting nasty. You know it's true.
They also released a retailer-exclusive Map Room Indy, who comes with the Staff of Ra, his notebook, and a repeat of Sala's accessories. He's one of the nicer figures in the line, but there's not much you can do with him unless you build yourself a map room. At least he pairs well with the Sala figure.
Indy, I could really go for a sun-kissed right about now.
Temple of Doom is always highly anticipated in Indiana Jones merchandise ranges, and always underserved by the licensee. So it should come as no surprise we ended up with only two essential Temple of Doom characters in the whole of the Adventure series. Indiana Jones from the climax of the film, and Short Round, who comes with a soft goods coat so he can be from the opening of the film or from the latter half. He also comes with a torch, his knife, the voodoo doll, and Indy's hat.
Bad news coming.
While not nearly as involved as Hasbro's superior 2009 rendition, he's nice enough. Frankly, we're just lucky he exists at all given Hasbro's track record. The Temple of Doom Indiana Jones is fine. His bridge knife shows up curved to all hell, and you'll spend an hour with boiling water and ice water trying to set it straight. Then you have a coiled whip and an uncoiled whip, and finally they give him a revolver, now with a painted grip, even though Indy lost his revolver at the start of the film.
Where's my gun? Where's my gun?
But you do you, Hasbro. That eye for detail is serving you well, guys. Again, articulation is really lacking on these figures. Indy can't even get his arms down to his side. It's a little pathetic. The build-in artifact for this one is the stone skull that houses the Sankara stones within the Temple of Kali. The coiled snake sculpture at the top comes with Dial of Destiny Indy, and can double as an actual snake nicely, so that's a small win. I won't mince words here. Having Indy and Short Round without Willy is arguably the dumbest move Hasbro made in this entire line. If they were gonna cut corners and economize, at least give us the main lady from each film and displayable trios of characters. Yeah, there are some impressive customs of Willy out there by people, but not all of us have the time or skills to purchase 6 different figures and Frankenstein a character together that Hasbro reasonably should have provided. Mola Ram is another example. There's no excuse for easily the most iconic Indiana Jones villain to not have a figure in this range. And don't start in with all of that crap about silver linings and how Hasbro is compelling us to push ourselves to be creative. That's like saying, if you didn't get your teeth knocked out, you would never have those perfect dental implants. The Adventure series also dripped out some Temple of Doom retail exclusives. Sadly, they were just variations of Indiana Jones. The first was Indiana Jones from the Club Obi-Wan nightclub in Temple of Doom. Yet another figure that doesn't make a damn bit of sense in this line. Hasbro didn't make Willie Scott in any form in the Adventure series, and I'm sure by now you aren't surprised to hear they didn't make Lao Che or any of his henchmen. So then why would we be interested in a tuxedo-wearing Indiana Jones who comes with a diamond, an urn, an antidote vial, a Chinese sword, and a spit of chickens? There's no bad guy to skewer the chickens into, no gong to use the sword on, no Lao Che to hand over the urn to, and certainly no Willie to feel up to get the antidote. This Indiana Jones is a good-looking figure, but another wasted slot that could have been given to an essential character of the many forever missing from this range. And the next one I'm about to mention definitely qualifies for that as well, and is pretty much the figure I hate the most out of this entire line for those reasons. The retailer-exclusive Hypnotized Indiana Jones has to be the biggest waste of time in the entire Adventure series line. When you consider we didn't get Willie Scott and a suspected Mola Ram was cancelled without explanation, what is the point of this figure? Yes, we received Short Round in the line, though he and classic Temple of Doom Indy were so late in the game, I can't help but suspect Disney felt forced to put them out due to Ke Huy Quan's timely Oscar win and couldn't justify sweeping Temple of Doom completely under the rug at that point despite their obvious wishes. I mean, we already know what happened to the intended new Lego set for Temple of Doom, and the retro figures of Temple of Doom Indy and Short Round were thrown out there at the same time, also without Willie or Mola Ram. So I suspect something is rotten in the state of Disneyland on this one. But here's the kick in the teeth with Hypnotized Indy. Despite being a pointless figure without Willie or Mola Ram, he was the one packed with the Sankara stones, the quest objects from Temple of Doom, which means every collector was forced to track him down. Which makes me wonder, if Hasbro was concerned that Willie would peg warm, which didn't stop them with Marion, Helena, or Elsa, why didn't they make Willie and pack her with the Sankara stones to compel collectors to pick her up? And let's be real, indie collectors would have bought her for sure either way. This smells like a Muggle move to me, where the suits at Hasbro and Disney all saw Willie as some kind of eye roll, and either deprioritized her or flat out blocked her from being considered. It's a terrible decision, and we end up with a very specific Indiana Jones with a chalice for the blood of Kali, the Sankara stones, the shoulder bag, and that long pike weapon, when all you really want out of it are the stones. Also, Hypnotized Indy comes with both glowing and normal stones, which is a nice touch. It's just a shame the Hypnotized Indy didn't come with a shoulder bag that can open and hold the 3 inert stones. The stones themselves are a bitch to put in the skull, as they don't seat with any security. Yet another missed opportunity. Now we turn the corner into Last Crusade, and it's here where I must make mention of my observation that someone on the Hasbro design team for this line has a massive hard-on for that movie. Clearly, there was some bias at play here within the Adventure series, because despite the initial focus on Raiders of the Lost Ark, the figure choices were demonstrably random in their assortment and inexplicably repetitive. If the Dial of Destiny figures feel like they were made at gunpoint, the Raiders figures feel like they were done out of resigned obligation with no passion put into them. By contrast, the Last Crusade figures feel obsessive in their inclusion. It's as if Hasbro wanted to make a Last Crusade line of toys and just tried to fit everything else into it where they could. It all begins with Indy himself, in his Castle Brunwald look with his necktie and stolen MP40. He also comes with a coiled whip and an unfurled whip, as well as that revolver which, sadly, Hasbro did not resculpt to give him a Webley like he carried in that film. Most worthy of mention for its odd inclusion this late in the line's life, they articulated Indy's hat so he can kick it back on his head, which is weird when you consider that he didn't do much of that in Last Crusade. That's more of a Temple of Doom thing, but it is more evidence that the Hasbro team cared more about Last Crusade than any of the other films. I'm betting they're all millennials who also have nostalgia boners for Ninja Turtles and '89 Batman and saw Last Crusade in theaters that same summer and think it's peak Indiana Jones for that pithy reason alone. Anyway, the Indy is decent. His father, on the other hand, initially looks impressive, but it all quickly descends into mediocrity. Henry Jones Sr. is, at a distance, everything you think you'd need from this character in figure form. He has the glasses, the hat, the briefcase, the Grail diary, and the umbrella. However, he has some of the ugliest arm joints in the line, with my example having a collapsing shoulder, and the holes for his suit coat are so big, the arm mechanisms are visible from space. Add to that the fact that Hasbro cheaped out and didn't even try to give this figure the tweed deco texturing on his suit, something they did make a small effort on back in 2008. As Last Crusade was given the most attention by Hasbro, the oversights on the Sean Connery figure are, well, I'll let the man himself say it for me.
Shocking. Positively shocking.
In the 2008 line, Hasbro gave us Marion, Willie, and Elsa. Here, despite Willie getting axed, Elsa makes it into the line, in her end movie getup with swappable heads, goggles, and the false grail. Like Marion, she looks okay, but not great. However, the fact that she's here while so many key characters in previous films are not is a surprise. This time around, the Adventure series gives us one we didn't get in 2008. Walter Donovan, also in his end movie outfit, complete with his nickel-plated Walther PPK, the Grail tablet, the False Grail again, and an alternate head when he dies from the False Grail. Then there's the Grail Knight himself, a figure that was also slotted for the 2008 line. Despite not having much usable articulation due to the armor and cape, the sculpting and likeness of this figure are staggeringly good, especially coming from Hasbro. With a working scabbard for his sword and the Holy Grail as an accessory, this figure had so much time and passion put into it, you wonder why a fraction of this effort wasn't given to Henry Jones Sr. However, it's when you see the build and artifact for this run that the shameless bias toward Last Crusade by Hasbro can no longer be dismissed with a hand wave. Where Raiders got the Ark and Temple of Doom got the Sankara skull, Last Crusade gets the entire Grail Temple altar, complete with every major detail, including distinct individual false grails, the silver plates, and the braziers. It's a show-stopping piece, and yet you have to pause and ask yourself, how did that come out of the same toy line as this anemic Raiders assortment? It's the best piece in the entire Adventure series range, hands down, and it comes out of left field. And when you combine it with the Grail Knight alone, it's a collection centerpiece. But then when you add Donovan and Elsa, it comes alive because, by chance or design, Hasbro managed to make enough figures that actually display together. And then you can take the Raiders idol grab Indy, who is effectively also Last Crusade's basic Indy in Hasbro terms, and now you have an entire scene from the film able to be recreated. You cannot do that with any other combo of figures in this entire adventure series. And what if I told you that included the rest of the Last Crusade figures in this line? Yeah, Hasbro wasn't done with the quest for the Holy Grail just yet. There was Indiana Jones in his professor suit from Last Crusade, which was a figure that was super annoying to get a decent example of, as this was Hasbro's brief blind box era of packaging, and for some reason the eye paint on this Indy wasn't something the factory could keep consistent. I ended up with at least 4 of these figures until I managed to get a good one. By Hasbro's own admission, they deliberately mismatched his suit with the accessories provided.
We wanted to make sure to include this given the importance in the quest for the Grail. So we were able to include it here, even though Indy wears a slightly different suit in that scene.
While this was Last Crusade Professor Indy, he was packed with items from the adventure in the Venetian catacombs. The knight's shield, which he never removed from the coffin, the leg bone he MacGyvered into a torch, and the Grail diary still in its mailing wrapper when it was on his desk at Barnett College. As his suit in Venice isn't anywhere close to this figure, something they flat out copped to on the box art itself, all of this is kind of a grab bag of random crap. He doesn't even come with his eyeglasses when he's doing his teacher thing, which is a huge miss.
That's usually when the ground falls out from underneath your feet.
And it's annoying as hell they didn't go with his Raiders look as a professor, because in Hasbro's trademark what the f fashion, they released a 2-pack of Marcus and Belloc. First, let's all agree that Marcus and Belloc never shared a scene together in Raiders of the Lost Ark, so this doesn't make much sense right off the starting line. Secondly, why on earth is this killer Belloc we've wanted in figure form for over 40 years not the single-packed version? Why didn't they make a 3-pack with Ceremonial Belloc, Tote, and Dietrich as the art crew or something, and then have this Belloc be the single-boxed version? Because this one would have sold far better on its own than Ceremony Belloc ever does. And then there's the lingering question of Marcus. We're given Raiders Marcus, and he comes with an apple and Indy's giant Bible from the scene with the federal agents. But why?
There's a picture of it right here. That's it.
If this had been a 2-pack with Raiders Professor Indy and Marcus, this would make total sense. Indy gets his briefcase, Marcus has his discreetly stolen apple, and the Bible is there as the feature accessory. Or do a 2-pack of Last Crusade Professor Indy and Marcus where they have the Cross of Coronado, the mailed Grail diary, and maybe the Grail tablet. Then put a correct Venice Catacombs Indiana Jones on shelves as intended without the stupid compromise. As it is, Marcus from Raiders has no figure to display with, and it's a double insult as Marcus had his largest role in Last Crusade. Had they done a Last Crusade Desert Marcus, he could have been displayed with Henry and your basic Indy, or even Donovan and Elsa when he's their hostage. And Belloc? Well, so far aside from Tote, he doesn't have anyone that would display well with him.
Does anyone understand a word I'm saying?
The retailer exclusives continued with Kazim of the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword. Now, despite this figure definitely being an outlier in grand what the f fashion, Kazim may just be the best figure in the entire Adventure series line. It was asinine of Hasbro to make this figure in his Venice pinstripe suit and not provide the proper Indy or Elsa for him to encounter. That being said, he looks awesome. He comes with a pile of weapons, which makes me look at Hasbro and wonder why they couldn't pony up a few pistols for other figures in this line. Kazim has his C96 Mauser pistol, the 1916 Mauser rifle, and the MP28 machine gun. He's loaded down like RoboCop while almost every other figure in this line is defenseless. It's bizarre. The last figure in this range I wanted to mention is from Raiders of the Lost Ark, but showed up rather late in the line's brief lifespan. And that's Indiana Jones from the Cairo street fight. This is one of those looks for Indy that is the favorite of many, including myself. But more often than not, it isn't offered, or on the rare occasions it isn't done well at all.
Oh my god. Yeah, this is bad. This is really bad.
So I was really nervous about this one because it's closer to my heart than almost anything else. And that's saying a lot where Indiana Jones is concerned. The figure comes with a respectable attempt at doing the disheveled shirt and a new expression for Jones himself, along with the coiled and unfurled whip, the revolver, the monkey, and a few hands. While the gun was still way too undersized, I was surprised the figure was able to take the pose of the famous re-release movie poster so well. And now I suspect Hasbro based their sculpting off this image. While the figure is far from perfect, it's not terrible, and the fact that he was released means Marion is no longer alone in the range. And you can even pair this Indy with Belloc as well for the Marhala bar scene.
I see your taste in friends remains consistent.
However, as stated earlier about the Germans, there are no Cairo assassins in this line, and with the glaring omission of the Cairo swordsman, you can't even recreate the most famous laugh in all of Indiana Jones. Given that figure was also left out of the retro collection, I suspect once again the firm hand of Disney banning the inclusion of characters of color, which is literally non-inclusive, just in case you were confused. Disney, hypocrites to the end. Officially at this point, that's all the Adventure series had to offer before it closed shop. Hasbro never intended to put much into this line, but their lack of common sense or care is staggering. Outside of anything related to Last Crusade, that is. The elephant in the room here is the total shutout of anything related to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is a shame from many directions. For one, it means a key part of Indy's cinematic history was ignored. For another, a lot of great character designs like Spalko and the Russians, far more interesting than anything in Dial of Destiny, were absent entirely from the selection. It's, in my view, a rather unforgivable and short-sighted decision.
Eventually they're gonna let me out of this chair, comrade, and when they do, I'm gonna break your nose.
Also, if you've been paying attention throughout this video, you may have noticed that every Indy's hat is modeled after the Raiders of the Lost Ark fedora. Given the Raiders Indy was released first, Hasbro appears to have made the fedora sculpt resemble Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then used it on all of the other Indiana Jones figures in the Adventure series range. As much as I love the Raiders hat the best, this was a supremely dumb decision. All of the other hats in the series look similar to each other in shape, and none of them look like the Raiders hat. In other words, if they were only going to do one hat sculpt, they would have been better served to model it after Temple of Doom or Last Crusade, because the majority of the Indy figures would then have a correct hat, leaving only Raiders Indy as the anomaly. However, what they've done is make the Raiders Indies vaguely correct, and left all the other Indies with inaccurate lids. Within the existing line, there were opportunities for economical additions with the existing tooling that were not taken. For one, an action-oriented Dial of Destiny Indiana Jones would have been more appealing, specifically his bullwhip work in the Hotel Atlantique.
Get back!
All Hasbro would have needed to do is take the Last Crusade torso with the tie, swap it over to the Destiny legs, and give him an unfurled whip. Would that have been so difficult? And then at least their version of Voller would have had a figure to pair with on the shelf. And bringing it back around to Crystal Skull, if you take that Dial of Destiny torso you almost ditched and put it on the Last Crusade legs, remove the rope from the backpack and give him one of those shovels, now you've got yourself a respectable Crystal Skull Indiana Jones from the scenes in the cemetery before he loses his revolver.
Grave robbers will be shot.
Good thing we're not grave robbers.
And even without kit bashing their own range for new figures, the existing figures had ample opportunities for better presentations. There's no reasonable excuse that Voller is denied his Walther PPK when Donovan is given the exact same gun. At the same time, Indy uses a stolen Walther P-38 in Archimedes' tomb. Hasbro makes that exact accessory for Tote. Why it wasn't included with their Tomb of Archimedes Indiana Jones is a brain-dead decision. You can acquire a torch and a larger revolver for Indy from Gridiron Studios, a set that also comes with a gun belt and whip. Frankly, the gun belt is rather inaccurate, and the whip is really Mickey Mouse. However, getting the torch and gun are arguably worth it. Ultimately, I ended up painting an extra pair of gloved hands from Tote in the proper color and pairing them with the gridiron torch to give Indy that Well of Souls appearance. And I'm happy with the result, as he can now be paired with Sala and even Belloc.
Why, Dr. Jones, whatever are you doing in such a nasty place?
Why don't you come on down here? I'll show you.
I also found a seller in France that made a 3D printed Webley. Unfortunately, the quality of this Webley accessory isn't great and it's still undersized, so I can't recommend it, but it does exist. All in all, I think Hasbro should have done figure 3-packs aimed at adult collectors through online sale, so essential figures would have been available in display groupings. This might also have allowed for the henchmen, troops, and military characters essential to any Indiana Jones action figure experience. As it exists now, it's a bunch of disparate characters standing around on your shelf without memory or purpose. True false grails in every sense of the metaphor. Indy's last hurrah really was with the honest but flawed 2008 range. This time, even if the people at Hasbro had no intention of getting behind a new Indiana Jones line for the long term, they could have at least worked harder to read their headpiece correctly so they had the knowledge about Dr. Jones's history to dig in the right places instead of the wrong ones. But who are we kidding? Hasbro doesn't even know what the headpiece to the Staff of Ra looks like.
I'm like a bad penny. I always turn up. While certainly not an action figure, Hasbro's Staff of Ra roleplay toy is officially a part of the Indiana Jones Adventure series, because the box was labelled as such.
What exactly is a headpiece to the Staff of Ra?
This bronze medallion is one of the greatest MacGuffins in cinema history, and it is the artifact that sets in motion the race between Indiana Jones and the Nazis, who are both searching for the lost Ark of the Covenant.
Did you guys ever go to Sunday school?
In the 1981 film Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones uses the headpiece to the Staff of Ra in the map room in order to locate the Well of the Souls, the famed resting place of the Lost Ark, and countless Indiana Jones enthusiasts have wanted for years to add a 1:1 scale replica of this prop to their collections. So it makes sense that Hasbro produced one for their Indiana Jones Adventure series line. In recent years, Hasbro has done good business making 1:1 scaled collectibles, such as Star Wars helmets, of which I own a few, and Marvel Legends accessories, such as Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer. And for the most part, these have been pretty decent collectibles. So their decision to produce a 1:1 scale Staff of Ra headpiece managed to get me somewhat intrigued. For the 1981 movie, 2 different headpieces were created by 2 different artists. The first one is commonly referred to as the Ravenwood Bar headpiece, and is featured in most of the scenes filmed at Elstree Studios. The second and more commonly referenced headpiece is first featured on Sala's balcony in Cairo, and this is also the prop used when the Imam deciphers its inscription, in a scene that puts our hero a step ahead of the bad guys. This Hasbro designed piece, which has been copied from the second version of the movie prop, comes in some very bland plastic-free packaging, and I think Hasbro really missed a golden opportunity here to create an exciting and highly displayable window box for this product. Inside the packaging you'll find 3 main components: the staff, the removable headpiece and the display stand. And according to the description on the Hasbro Pulse website, this Staff of Ra headpiece electronic collectible roleplay talisman, well that's a mouthful, is designed to look like the fabled medallion featured in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Even though the film is just called Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it actually doesn't have the name Indiana Jones in the title. But whatever. The removable headpiece, featuring a premium metallic look and feel, is great for on-the-go Indiana Jones cosplay, and makes for a great addition to any Indiana Jones costume. Well, let's just see about that, shall we? The sculpted details are quite accurate, if a little soft, especially around the edges of the medallion. Yet I do appreciate that each side of the headpiece has a different inscription, as this was a key plot point in the film. I half expected Hasbro to simply duplicate one half of the talisman to save money on tooling, so I was quite surprised when they didn't. However, the company's claims of a premium metallic look and feel are laughably inaccurate. The plastic feels exactly like plastic when you touch it, and the assertion that Hasbro's Staff of Ra headpiece has a premium metallic look should see the corporation sued for false advertising. When you have this piece in hand, it has a texture and appearance that's closer to melted butter than the look of the bronze medallion seen in the film. The staff used in the movie is very long, with it standing noticeably taller than Indiana Jones. But Hasbro have opted to issue us with a much more truncated version, which serves as a small display stand for the headpiece, as opposed to an actual life-size prop. The talisman easily clips into the top of the staff piece, and then it can be inserted into one of the 4 holes located in the display stand. This stand has a good amount of weight to it, despite it being made from plastic, and there are a few symbols sculpted into the base. Although Hasbro have designed this stand to look like it's made from grey rock, instead of the sandstone design used on the film set. This is yet another example of Hasbro's almost epidemic lack of attention to detail.
They're digging in the wrong place.
The main gimmick of this roleplay toy is the light-up effects that are powered by a couple of AA batteries. If you place the headpiece into any one of the 3 outer holes in the display stand, nothing happens. Yet if you position the medallion in the central hole, it lights up the crystal in the middle, as well as the inscriptions that surround the outer edge. And while this is kinda cool, the suggestion that this headpiece would make for a great addition to any Indiana Jones costume is debatable at best. If you're one of those Indiana Jones cosplayers who doesn't pay attention to details, like on which side of the body Indy wore his satchel, or what colour his whip handle should be, then Hasbro's Staff of Ra headpiece is probably for you.
Your appearance is exactly the way I imagined.
Yet for the more discerning enthusiast, this chintzy attempt at an Indiana Jones prop is an easy pass that definitely doesn't belong in a museum. It belongs in an Ollie's, on deep, deep discount.
Where'd you get this? From him?
Ceremonial Belloc, what a waste of time. Like, he's always a peg warmer. Why did you do him again? A standard Belloc with, you know, the German machine gun with the white hat and everything would have been a lot better. It's a shame Last Crusade wasn't given a few more figures, as Donovan, Sala, Marcus, and Kazim would have made welcome additions.
I love the look of that outfit, you know, with the white shirt she's got on and the gloves, and then that peaked cap and the goggles.
Hasbro, you've managed to cheat off RetroBlasting's test paper, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target.